Well, since today's topic is all about growing old, let's face it, and a lot of you want to know what it is going to be like for those in your 40s and 50s and 60s, and the rest of you in your 70s, and us, I should say, the rest of us, 70s and 80s, we already know what it's like. And growing older has many benefits, which you all know. Retiring and having the time to travel and see family and all of that. But let's face it, let's get down to reality and the truth. It has its downsides. And one of them we're going to talk about, and that is about what happens to some of us, many of us, I should say, in our older years, and that's the loneliness that can come from various reasons, the feeling of invisibility, that as we get older, nobody wants to hear what we have to say, nobody wants us around. Not true all the time, but sometimes, yes, and it's part of one of the stereotypes of growing older, especially in the United States. Good morning, my friends. Well, it's 8:30 in the morning. I've been up since 3 o'clock, had my coffee at 3. I have never gone back to sleep. I've been outside, I fed the cats, I watered the garden, I started to make a soup. And now I feel the need to slug. Just one of those days. As you can see, I'm still in my PJs. I have bedhead. So stay tuned, ladies and gents, if you would like to explore this topic of growing older with me this morning. Okay, it's later in the day, and I've decided on what kind of a soup I'm gonna make. I started early this morning with my holy trinity of onions, carrots, and celery. And I just poured in a big box of broth. And I've decided, I know Muzi loves minestrone soup, so that's what I'm gonna do. With minestrone soup, they say improvisation is the word. So I'm going to improvise. Cucumbers, cauliflower, string beans, asparagus, whatever you want to throw in, whatever you have in your refrigerator, they say go for it. So as you know, I like to clean out my refrigerator, but I happened to do that recently. I don't have that much in there. I would have loved to have put some string beans in, but I don't have them. But I do have a little cabbage. The other night I did make some coleslaw, so I have half a head of cabbage left. And I will put that in. Some of the other things I will put in, I use the low sodium broths, and it doesn't matter whether you use chicken broth, beef broth. I also am going to put a can of cannelloni beans. They recommend white beans, but you know, you could go ahead and do kidney beans are nice in this as well. So I have a can of that. Maybe I'll do 2. It all depends on how big I want to make it. Sometimes I make a large soup and I either send some up to Colleen and Micah and the kids, or I wind up eating it for 2 or 3 days for breakfast, lunch, and supper. That's me. I love a hot cup of soup in the morning for breakfast, but as you know, I'm a crazy breakfast person. Now, it does call for your can of tomatoes or whatever. I like to put in those diced tomatoes that have garlic in them and they're fire roasted, because I do always like a little kind of pop to it, any soup that I make. So right now, that's what I'm putting in. And I have half a box of elbow macaroni left. I used some last week for one of my cold pasta salads. So that's it. And all you do, it's really a dump soup right now. I won't put the pasta in until the end. I will cut up the cabbage and I'll put that in near the end. even this near the end. So what I'm doing right now is basically dumping the beans and the fire roasted tomato mix in. Here we go. And here's my pot. So, that's gonna be good. And then I have a lot of spices. Now I do have fresh thyme outside. I do have fresh oregano. I have basil, I have chives. I'll probably use some of that for greenery. And I also am going to put in some Parmesan cheese. Now I don't think I have any fresh. I would grate that and I would put that on top right before I serve it. I happen to have some French bread for Moosey too. So we're in business for our supper. And believe it or not, it's still only 2 o'clock. I'm way ahead of myself here. I still have to get in front of the camera and do some talking. Okay, let's dig into this discussion about loneliness, invisibility, feeling not wanted, not needed. Now, there are going to be many people who this will not apply to. Those of you who are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, who have partners and spouses and many, many friends and see your children all the time, your grandchildren who travel, who have all sorts of things that keep you busy, this might not be your cup of tea right now, but this is very important to an awful lot of people. And a lot of those people are going to be women or men who are living alone, who are either divorced, who are separated. Now remember, you can live alone and not be lonely. And we've just discussed that before. A lot of women live alone and love it and keep themselves busy and have lots of friends and family around. That's not a problem with them. At some point, it might hit you. Now, there are reasons for feeling this way, and I'm going to call them the 3 Ds: distance, divorce, and disputes. Now, the word disputes comes under estrangements. Some of you might be estranged from your children, which in turn would mean your grandchildren. There could be many reasons for that. That could go all the way back to childhood, disputes at that point, neglect, abuse. You know what it is if that is your problem. But distance seems to be a big one. And I'm also going to bring COVID into this too. This threw us back a ways, that's for sure. When you are far apart, statistics say that 42% of older people drive over 200 miles to visit children or grandchildren. And distance can really throw a wrench in the loneliness and feeling that you're not needed, not wanted. Now, this does not mean that you are not loved by your children or by your grandchildren or great-grandchildren. And I'm going to tell you why. I have experience of that with talking with some of my grandchildren. In fact, I was talking with Ryan the other day. By the way, Ryan did a new banner for me, and I want you to look at it on my homepage. She put some new pictures and a new wording. And by the way, I've said a slogan that aging is a gift. Carpe diem. Carpe diem is Latin for seize the day or seize the moment. And it goes way back to a quote by a Roman poet by the name of Horace, Carpe diem. And I just love that. Seize the moment. Try and deal with it. Because this is a gift that we've lived this long. You might as well try and do the very best you can. And I know that's an old saying too. But to get back to this, I'm going to talk about this problem or this idea of children friends being lost, of separations from children and grandchildren. And you don't have to be alone to experience this. It could be you and your husband, you and your partner, spouse. It could be friends, people who just have friends who have somehow drifted away from friendships. And I'm going to talk about this in circles of support. Now, when a baby is born, his first circle of support obviously is mom, and dad gets in there. And then it widens a little bit. The second circle includes siblings. The siblings are very important to a child or a little toddler as he gets older. And then grandparents come in there, especially if you see them often. And that's a big thing. And as it gets wider for a child, about 10 years old, they say that a child begins to include friendships, friends from school, into their circle of support. And at that point, grandparents might come out to another circle out here. Now, parents, obviously, if all is going well at home, now this this circle is dependent on what's going on within the home. If there are problems, if there's abuse, neglect, things that happen in childhood, that's going to throw everything off. And down the line, when that circle gets big, it's very hard to try and get back down unless there's reconciliation of some sort. And that's a big problem. And only you can learn how to do this, maybe with therapy, to get back into that if that is your situation. But you have to realize that as these friends, school friends, and then boyfriends and girlfriends and fiancés, and then it begins a new circle of when the child gets married, the husband is now in there, or the wife, and then their children. And so these other circles begin. Now, just because you are not a part of their lives, and I'm talking everyday life, that does not mean that you are not loved or thought of. And it's very natural for children, grandchildren, to not need the grandparents, the older people, as much as they did when they were younger. For instance, I remember, and here we live 100 feet from Colleen and her family. Now, we lived here when all the babies were born. They've all been born pretty much within the past 20 years, and we've lived here almost 20 years. And in the beginning, we were part of the caretaking. We were here every day, and we took care of children for vacations when Colleen and Micah wanted to go away. We were really a big part of their support system. And as they were toddlers, 4 and 5 years old, oh boy, they would make a beeline down here to sit in bed with me, and we'd color and we'd play the piano, we would paint. And I was a big part of their daily life, and so was Moosey. They would garden with Moosey. They'd sing with Moosey. He would tell stories. I would tell them stories. We'd read books together. And we were a big part of their circle. Now, as they started off in school and friendships from school, they didn't run down so much anymore. They still loved us, though. And you know that. So I had this discussion with Ryan, who is now 20, and she assured me that we are still very much loved, but we are not needed in their life. And you know what? I can understand that. We might need them a little more than they need us, only because we remember those close times and we want to experience that again. But it's not going to happen. So you have to realize that those circles of support and need and love, don't think you're not loved. Now, in these 3Ds, disputes and divorces and distances, it might be a different story. And if you have problems, really all goes back down to the way the children were raised, and then they would pretty much raise their children the same way you raised yours. And if there were mistakes made, it's kind of hard to recoup, but it does happen. And please don't ever give up any hope. Now, there is also mental illness that might come into this, in which case none of this was something that would come back to you. But you know, at this point in the United States, there seems to be a lot more emphasis on this problem. And I've watched these programs on television where older women are interviewed, even women in their 40s and 50s, who are suffering from this invisibility thing. Now, you just have to show up. If you feel invisible, get out there and smile at people. Just do the best you can to advocate yourself. Say, call up your child or say, hey, you know, I miss you. I want to see you. I do that. Moosey does that. He feels the need sometimes to just hear babies, and we'll call up Molly or one of the granddaughters that has little ones. Hey, we have to see your little kids. Can we come over? That's what we do. We self-advocate. Now, some of the kids are really great about thinking about call us. We do a lot of connections on technology. Every once in a while, there's a Zoom of kids. That's a little harder. Or FaceTiming. Mikey loves to FaceTime with his little ones with us. Now, messaging is always fun. Over the years, we have made full use of Facebook and Instagram. Oh, I'd say 10, 15 years ago, the kids showed us how to get on. And when I would say, oh, send me photographs or something, this was all before we had our cameras and everything. And I remember Margie saying, Mom, you got to get on Facebook and Instagram and keep in touch with everybody that way on a daily basis. And that's pretty much what we do also. Now, with our big, large family, we always have been very close. And for years and years, we had the big family house. And you know, sometimes when you move out of the big family house where that was the gathering place, everyone came there, it isn't that way anymore. Now we're in a tiny cottage and we can't have the parties. So we have to rely on children or grandchildren to have the big gatherings. So, you know, it's something that you have to learn to cope with. Life isn't always fair. Getting older does make you think more about the way it used to be. It's not going to be that way anymore. And you know, as you get older too, you have to learn to be your own advocate and find things that are going to fill those voids. If you have feelings like that, voids like that, grow some flowers, some herbs, simple things. Do a little cooking, read books, get a hobby. You know, I hate to even say all this because we've heard this so many times, and you know best what can pull you out of a funk. And I'm going to go back to this. Aging and growing old is a gift. Not everyone gets that gift. But here we are. Some of you are in your 70s and 80s like us, and we should be blessed and feel blessed to be here, to even have the chance to be able to see friends once in a while, to see children and grandchildren. It's not going to be an everyday part. And you know what? We are not. It's sort of the switcheroo, as they say. Many people say the children are taking over, taking care of the grandparents. And you know what? Maybe that's the way it should be. And we would all hope that that would happen. It doesn't always happen. But for those of you who are depressed or seriously lonely, you gotta pull yourself up by your panties, your bra straps, whatever, and show up Get out there. You make the calls. You send the cards. You send the message. And tell them that you miss them. Tell whoever you're missing, friends or children or grandchildren. And even if you are estranged, there is always hope. Just make your feelings heard. Don't just sit in misery, because maybe that's all it takes is for one of your children or grandchildren to hear a grandma or a mom say, I really miss you. I have the need to see you. Maybe that's all it takes. So I just went out to the garden and I picked some, I don't know whether this is oregano or my thyme. And then I did pick some basil, and I will de-stem some of this, chop some of it up, put it in. I'm also going to add, I do have some nice garlic in there. I put in about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic, so it's going to be good. Moosey likes it when it tastes rich. And I think I'll use some Italian seasoning. So I'm going to do that now. It's already smelling good, real good. Get some of the leaves off this. This is always hard to do. There, that's good. So, it's starting to smell good. And I love the smell of the fresh herbs on my hands. So I'll wait maybe half an hour when we're not ready to eat supper yet. We probably will eat supper around 4. So I think I'll just let this rest after it steeps for a while. Maybe add another box of the broth. And then near the end, cabbage, maybe cucumber, and definitely the pasta will come near the end. And then we'll be ready to eat. How easy is that? You know something, going along with today's topic of growing older and trying to be comfortable and happy within ourselves, I just realized that cooking, although my cooking is very simple, I'm not a great cook, and I don't like to, most times I don't like to spend tons of time preparing foods, but I do like these semi-homemade types of cooking. I do love growing herbs in the garden, so I realize right now I am fulfilled, I am happy. I know my Moosey needs me, and we need food, and for some reason or other, this simple little act of being in here makes me feel good. I feel as if I'm fulfilling a need. So it's one of the coping mechanisms. Stay busy, do a little bit of something that makes you happy. Doesn't have to be exuberant things. Not exuberant, that's not the word. Extravagant. Just stay busy and learn. Read about recipes, read about flowers and gardening. And there's so many other things. Now, Moosey, on the other hand, has more challenges than I do. I am basically the caretaker, which is a challenge in its own, but he has the disabilities. He gets very frustrated because he can't move around like he used to. He needs a lot of my help in dressing and showering and various other things. And it does frustrate him because he's so used to being fit. And he finds solace in reading. He does like his television. He loves watching old movies, the Turner channel of old movies, especially reading he loves. And then he loves to give books to the kids, our children, who are readers. We have a couple of kids that are avid readers, and they read the same book and then they sit and discuss it. He gets a thrill out of that. The other thing that really excites Moose, as it does me, and that is seeing the little ones, the teenagers, of course the kids, but somehow he goes back to that, hearing the laughter of babies and children and playing with them. Their hearts are so pure, and they love us. When they see us, they love us. We might not be part of their little circle, their immediate circle, but when they see us, they love us. And right now, that's fine. Okay, I'm gonna let that sit. It's only 2:30, so I will come back to it a little bit later, near the end, probably about 15 minutes before we eat, and put in the cabbage and maybe the cucumber and the elbow macaroni. You know, if you're a meat person or your family prefers meat, you could put in some hot Italian minced sausages. I do have a box of that in the freezer, but I prefer to not put any meat in it. I do even have some chicken, but I have another idea for the leftover chicken that I'm gonna make. This way I can send something up to Colleen's, because Colleen and Ryan are both vegetarians. So I can share the soup that way too. A little bit of Parmesan on the top and 2 pieces of French bread. Bon appetit. Well,
Minestrone. Remember, I got this recipe from Mosey Dole and Mosey Posey.
My brother's wife, long
And
time
I used
ago.
to have it a lot up at Big Bear.
Yep, you were the soup maker, that's for
I
sure.
was.
You were. How's the bread? Are you dipping it? Do you like the Parmesan on top?
Yeah, but it all melted in.
Well, that makes it taste better, right?
Oh, yeah.
I love my cabinets. I did all the refinishing. That's faux wood. I love that one. I'm very proud of that. Look at my faux wood. This was just a dark brown paint. And then I painted the glass and put the cute little signs on. And I love these in here. The kitchen, of course, this is 90 years old, and we have terrible storage problems, but it's to my liking, and it's old, and you know me, I love everything old. And then put my favorite goodies and things here. I did get rid of a lot of cookbooks to the kids, but I've kept some favorites. I hope this helps. I don't want to go on and on because I think we know so much of this, but just know that you most probably are loved by everybody that you think has forgotten about you. They haven't forgotten about you. And I can say that from my own experience. So, I love you all. I'm so glad that you're here. If you would like, comment, tell me if anything like this, if you understand this. And I do want you to try and understand it. You are loved. And you know what? If nothing else works, come on and start watching us, because we're here. All these lovely ladies that are part of our family, we're here for each other. And if that's all that you can get, we welcome you. Goodbye for now. I love you all. Hugs to everybody. And God bless us all.